Most powerful person in the room is never the one talking. While everyone else is performing, explaining, justifying, filling every silence with noise, one person sits back, watching, calculating, collecting data, and you don't even notice they're doing it. You think silence is weakness, passivity, a lack of things to say. You're wrong. Strategic silence is the most sophisticated form of social dominance. It's a weapon disguised as absence, a calculated choice masquerading as natural behavior. And the people who've mastered it, they're reading you, influencing you, and controlling conversations without saying a word. This video will change how you see every conversation. You'll realize that the person who talks the most loses the most, that every word you speak is data you're giving away for free, that silence isn't empty, it's the most information-dense space in human interaction. From ancient Stoic philosophers to modern negotiators, from Buddhist monks to billionaire CEOs, the pattern is undeniable. Power speaks softly or not at all. I'm going to show you why silence is the ultimate psychological leverage, not the awkward silence of social anxiety, the deliberate, strategic silence of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. By the time we're done, you'll understand why silence makes people confess, why the person asking questions controls the conversation, why talking too much is hemorrhaging power. This isn't about being quiet. It's about weaponizing silence until words become unnecessary. Part 1. The Economics of Words. Here's what nobody teaches you about communication. Every word you speak has a cost. Not a monetary cost, a strategic cost. Think of conversation as currency exchange. Every statement you make reveals your position, shows your cards, exposes your knowledge gaps, demonstrates your emotional state, creates accountability to a claim. When you talk, you're not just expressing yourself, you're transferring power to everyone listening. Watch a negotiation between an amateur and a professional. The amateur talks, explains their reasoning, justifies their position, fills silences with nervous elaboration. The professional? 3 moves. 1. Asks questions. 2. Listens actively. 3. Speaks only when it changes the outcome. Why? Because every time the amateur talks, they're giving away their bottom line, their desperation level, their alternatives, their pressure points. Concrete example. Salary negotiation scenario. Amateur approach. Well, I was hoping for $80,000, but I understand budgets are tight, and honestly, I'd be willing to go as low as $70,000 if that works better for you, because I really want this position. And what they just did, negotiated themselves down before the other person even responded. Strategic silence approach. I'm looking for a competitive salary that reflects my experience. Silence. Let them speak first. Let them make the offer. Let them negotiate against themselves. The core principle. The person who speaks first in a negotiation usually loses. The person who explains themselves most loses respect. The person who fills every silence loses control, because in conversation, volume is inversely proportional to power. And here's what makes this dangerous. Most people are completely unconscious of this dynamic. They think being articulate means talking more. They think being engaging means constant verbal output. They think silence is a void that needs filling. But silence isn't empty. Silence is where power accumulates. Part 2. The Psychology of Silence. Provocative reframe. When you go silent, something fascinating happens in the other person's brain. They panic. Neuroscience layer. Human beings are wired to interpret silence as potential threat. In ancestral environments, silence meant predators nearby, social rejection imminent, danger in the environment, exclusion from the tribe. This anxiety hasn't disappeared, it's just become social. Modern manifestation. When you stop talking mid-conversation, the other person's brain interprets it as, they're judging me, I said something wrong, they're losing interest, I need to fill this void. And that's when they start revealing. The confession effect. Police interrogators know this technique intimately. The Reed technique, step 7. After presenting evidence, the interrogator goes completely silent. No questions, no prompts, just sustained eye contact and waiting. What happens? The suspect, unable to tolerate the psychological pressure of silence, begins to explain, justify, confess. Not because they're being forced to speak, because silence creates a vacuum that the human psyche desperately wants to fill. Everyday application. You don't need to be interrogating criminals to use this. Scenario 1. Someone makes an unreasonable request. Weak response. Oh, I don't know, that seems like a lot. I'm not sure I can do that. Maybe we could... Strategic silence response. Pause. Hold eye contact. Say nothing. What happens? They start walking back their request before you even respond. Scenario 2. Someone is lying to you. Weak response. I don't believe you. Here's why you're wrong. Strategic silence response. Interesting. Silence. What happens? They keep talking, adding details, and eventually contradicting themselves. The discomfort weapon. Silence weaponizes social discomfort. The person who can tolerate silence longer controls the conversation. Specific patterns to watch. When you deploy strategic silence, people reveal through over-explanation. They start providing details you didn't ask for. Deflection. They change the subject to escape the silence. Projection. They ask, why are you being quiet? Transferring their discomfort. Confession. They admit things they weren't planning to say. Concession. They compromise on their position to relieve tension. The power principle. The person uncomfortable with silence is always at a disadvantage. The person who masters silence is always in control. Transition hook. But there's a level beyond this, because strategic silence isn't just about making others uncomfortable. It's about creating space for intelligence to operate. Part 3. Silence as intelligence amplifier. Cognitive reframe. Here's the paradox nobody talks about. Talking makes you dumber. The cognitive load problem. When you're speaking, your brain is doing 3 things simultaneously. 1. Formulating what to say next. 2. Monitoring how you're being received. 3. Defending your current position. What you're not doing is actually processing what the other person is saying. Listening hierarchy. There are 4 levels of listening. Level 1. Waiting to talk. You're not listening, you're rehearsing your response. This is where 90% of people operate. Level 2. Selective listening. You hear words that confirm your existing beliefs and filter out the rest. Level 3. Active listening. You're genuinely processing what they're saying without formulating responses. Level 4. Strategic silence. You're listening for patterns, contradictions, emotional leaks, and unconscious reveals. Only levels 3 and 4 provide actual intelligence advantage. The observer's edge. When you're silent, you notice micro-expressions they're trying to hide, vocal tone shifts that betray emotional state, word choice patterns that reveal priorities, what they avoid saying, often more important than what they say, timing of responses, hesitation versus confidence, body language incongruency. Words say one thing, but the body says another. All of this disappears when you're busy talking. Socrates' wisdom. Socrates, arguably one of history's most influential thinkers, didn't give lectures. He asked questions, then stayed silent. Why? Because questions plus silence equals forced self-examination in the other person. The Socratic method isn't teaching, it's using strategic silence to make people discover their own contradictions. Modern application, the question framework. Instead of stating your position, ask, what makes you think that? Silence. Let them explain. What evidence would change your mind? Silence. Watch them realize they haven't thought about it. How did you arrive at that conclusion? Silence. Let them walk through their logic and find the holes. You're not arguing, you're letting silence do the work. The decision-making advantage. Research shows that people make better decisions when they process information in silence, delay immediate responses, and avoid premature verbal commitment. Why? Because once you articulate a position out loud, cognitive bias kicks in. You become psychologically invested in defending what you said, even if better information emerges. Strategic silence keeps you flexible. The power dynamic. In any conversation, the person talking is giving information, revealing positions, creating vulnerability. The person silent is collecting data, maintaining flexibility, preserving power. And this is where it gets even more sophisticated, because the ultimate form of strategic silence isn't just knowing when not to speak, it's knowing how to make your few words carry maximum weight. Part 4. The 12 Laws of Strategic Silence. What follows are 12 principles, not rules to follow rigidly, but patterns to recognize and deploy strategically. These are the techniques the most powerful communicators use, often unconsciously, to dominate conversations while appearing to contribute the least. Number 1. The Golden Ratio, 70-30 Rule. Listen 70% of the time, speak 30%. The amateur thinks dominance means talking the most. The professional knows the person asking questions controls the conversation. Application. In any meeting, negotiation, or conversation, aim to have the other person talking twice as long as you. Why? Because they're revealing, you're collecting. The tell? Watch who asks the most questions in a conversation. That's who's actually in control. Number 2. The pause of power. After they finish speaking, count to 3 before responding. This does 3 things. 1. Signals you're actually processing, not just waiting to talk. 2. Creates slight discomfort that makes them elaborate. 3. Prevents reactive responses that give away your position. Application. Someone makes an offer. Don't respond immediately. Pause. Let the silence create pressure on their end. The pattern? Amateurs rush to fill silence. Professionals weaponize it. Number 3. The minimalist response. Say less than necessary. When you do speak, use 50% of the words you think you need. Weak. Well, I think that's interesting and I can see where you're coming from, but I'm not entirely sure I agree because there are several factors we should consider. Strategic. I see it differently. Silence. Why this works? It creates a knowledge vacuum. They'll ask, how? And then you control the conversation's direction. The pattern? Maximum impact, minimum words. Number 4. The mirror technique. Repeat their last 2 to 3 words as a question, then go silent. Them, I'm really frustrated with how this project is going. You, how it's going? Silence. Them proceeds to tell you everything. Why this works? It creates the illusion you're engaged while requiring 0 intellectual contribution. They fill the void by elaborating. FBI negotiators use this constantly. Number 5. The pregnant pause. When you want information, ask a question, then shut up completely. Weak approach. What happened with the client? Because I heard there was an issue, and I'm wondering if it's something we need to address, or maybe it was just a miscommunication. Strategic silence approach. What happened with the client? Complete silence. No follow-up, no clarification, no comfort. What happens? The silence becomes unbearable. They fill it with truth. The pattern? Silence is the most powerful follow-up question. Number 6. The reverse pressure principle. When pressured to speak, become quieter. When someone demands an immediate answer, response, or decision, weak, okay, let me think. I guess we could. Strategic, I need time to consider this properly. End of discussion. Why this works? It refuses to operate on their timeline. You reclaim control by refusing to be rushed. The pattern?
Urgency is often manufactured to prevent strategic thinking. Silence resists manipulation. Number 7. The question shield. Deflect personal questions with questions. When someone asks something you don't want to answer, weak, lie, over-explain, or reveal information. Strategic, how much did you pay for that? Why do you ask? Silence. What happens? They either reveal their true motive or they retreat. Either way, you didn't answer. The pattern? Questions redirect pressure without revealing cards. Number 8. The selective disclosure. Reveal information in inverse proportion to its value. Low-value information, share freely, builds rapport, appears open. Medium-value information, share strategically, creates perceived reciprocity. High-value information, protect completely. Power lies in what they don't know. Application, in negotiations, reveal minor preferences freely, conceal your true priorities completely. The pattern? Silence around what matters most preserves maximum leverage. Number 9. The observation statement. Replace arguments with neutral observations. When you disagree, weak, argument, that's wrong because X, Y, and Z. Strategic, I notice those two things contradict each other. Silence. Why this works? You're not arguing, you're pointing out objective reality and letting them reconcile it. The pattern? Observations plus silence equals self-persuasion. Number 10. The comfortable silence. Master the art of being comfortable while others are uncomfortable. This is the ultimate power move. Silence becomes awkward only if you're awkward in it. Training exercise. Practice sustaining eye contact in complete silence for 10 seconds, then 20, then 30. The person who breaks first loses. The pattern? Social dominance goes to whoever tolerates discomfort longest. Number 11. The confirmation trap. When you know someone is lying, go silent instead of accusing. Weak, that's not true, here's why. Strategic, Sustained eye contact, silence. What happens? The liar, unable to read your belief or disbelief, keeps talking, adds details, creates contradictions, confesses through elaboration. The pattern? Silence is the lie detector they can't fool. Number 12. The exit through silence. End conversations by becoming quieter, not by announcing departure. Weak, well, I should probably be getting going. Strategic, gradual reduction in verbal contribution, shorter responses, more silence. They feel the conversation ending naturally. The pattern, power doesn't announce its departure, it just withdraws. Part 5. The dark side, when silence becomes manipulation. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every technique I just taught you can be used ethically or manipulatively. The distinction. Strategic silence is power, you're protecting your interests while allowing space for truth. Strategic silence as abuse, you're weaponizing discomfort to control, punish, or gaslight. Recognizing weaponized silence. The silent treatment, abusive. Prolonged withdrawal as punishment, refusal to communicate to create anxiety, withholding information to maintain control, using silence to avoid accountability. This isn't strategic. This is emotional abuse. The sociopath's silence. Narcissists and sociopaths use silence differently. They go silent to create anxiety about their feelings, to punish perceived slights, to maintain unpredictability, trauma bonding, to avoid taking responsibility. Watch for the pattern. If silence is always followed by you apologizing for something you didn't do, you're being manipulated. The responsibility. With this knowledge comes accountability. Use strategic silence to protect yourself from manipulation, to make better decisions, to understand people more deeply, to communicate more effectively. Don't use it to punish people emotionally, to create unnecessary suffering, to avoid legitimate accountability, to gaslight or confuse. The line, strategic silence preserves your power without diminishing others. Weaponized silence destroys connection to maintain dominance. Know the difference. Part 5. The Awakening, Becoming Comfortable in Silence. Integration. If you've made it this far, you're probably having a realization. You talk too much. And that's not a judgment, it's a liberation. The recognition. Most talking is anxiety management, filling uncomfortable silence, is social performance, proving you're engaged, is ego protection, defending your intelligence, is approval seeking, hoping they'll like you. Very little talking is actually strategic. The transformation. When you begin practicing strategic silence, 3 things happen. Phase 1, discomfort. You'll feel awkward, rude, like you're not contributing enough. This is normal. You're breaking a lifetime habit. Phase 2, awareness. You'll notice how much people reveal when you just shut up. You'll see patterns you never saw before. You'll realize how much power you gave away by talking. Phase 3, mastery. Silence becomes your default. Words become tools you deploy intentionally. You speak less, but when you do, people listen. The social recalibration.
People will notice you've changed. Some will say, "You're so quiet lately. Are you okay? You're being weird." This is them unconsciously recognizing they've lost their ability to read you. Don't explain yourself. That defeats the entire purpose. Just smile and say, "I'm listening more." The ultimate realization. The smartest people aren't the ones with the most to say. They're the ones who've learned words are a limited resource. Silence is infinite. Talking reveals. Silence conceals. Noise is cheap. Silence is valuable. Everyone can speak. Few can truly listen. The power shift. When you master strategic silence, people will start asking what you think instead of you volunteering. Your words will carry more weight because they're rare. You'll make better decisions because you're not committed to verbal positions. You'll see through deception easily because you're watching, not performing. You become unreadable. And in a world where everyone's shouting to be heard, the person who's comfortable in silence is the most powerful person in the room. Closing. There's an old saying, "Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt." But that's not why smart people stay silent. Smart people stay silent because while you're talking, they're thinking. While you're revealing, they're collecting. While you're defending, they're deciding. The choice. You now have a choice. Either continue filling every silence with words, or start treating words like the scarce resource they are. The question. The next time you're in a conversation and you feel the urge to speak, ask yourself, will this word change the outcome? If the answer is no, say nothing. Because the most profound truth in communication is this: silence isn't the absence of power, it's where power lives. If this changed how you think about communication, there's more. Comment below. What's one conversation where you talked too much? And if you've been filling silences your whole life, it's time to stop. Remember, the snake doesn't announce its presence. The predator doesn't explain its strategy. The wise don't broadcast their knowledge. Power is quiet. Now you know why.